Andy Ogles under fire again. You know, I got to tell you that as a conservative, as a guy that watches the news every day, listens to the news every day, and watches as the Democrats and the left is going after conservatives every single day, it is infuriating to say the least. And this latest attack on Andy Ogles, you know, and I'm going to get into all of the details here, but one of the things that I think that we need to discuss as conservatives is the use of this term bipartisan. Because I've got to tell you that the more that I see this word bipartisan used, or this phrase bipartisan used, the more I realize that really what it is it's being used as a way to deflect against what I would say is very fair criticism of these organizations that are going after conservatives. And so we're going to get into what exactly it is that I mean by that, because whenever you see, and I've noticed this, whenever you see the term bipartisan, well, it's a bipartisan attack. Well, in the case of Andy Ogles, it's absolutely not, even though this is the phrase that is being utilized regarding this organization that is going after the congressman. And so let's get into this. The 5th Congressional District Congressman Andy Ogles under fire again. Now, this organization is being branded as a nonpartisan watchdog group, that's an air quote, that has asked for an investigation into Andy Ogles over, they say, quote, $1 million worth of discrepancies on his financial disclosures. Now, I'm just going to get right to the point here. What are the financial disclosures? There is a $320,000 personal loan that the congressman gave to his campaign. Now, what the accusation is, they say that his financial disclosures don't disclose assets that would allow the congressman to make this loan. In other words, where did he get this money to loan his campaign? They say that he also did not disclose a $700,000 line of credit that he had with First Bank. Now, way back when, if I remember correctly, he did have some struggles early on with an accountant, and now he says that he is cooperating with the FEC. I think part of what's going on clearly is that the left is trying to sort of pick off Republicans, specifically very conservative Republicans like Andy Ogles. And so that House of Representatives is getting, as far as the Republicans go, their majority is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And so what they're trying to do is get Andy Ogles, perhaps they're trying to oust him from the House of Representatives through some sort of an investigation. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But it is important to note that the organization that is going after the congressman, they're being labeled as bipartisan, but they're really not. This organization is run by a guy named Trevor Potter. Now, I'm going to warn you, this is going to get really weedy, but it is important because the phrase bipartisan, this is not a bipartisan organization. Just because one of these people within this organization has an R by their name doesn't necessarily make them bipartisan. It truly does not. The organization is run by a guy named Trevor Potter, who used to be legal counsel for John McCain. The very John McCain who hated Donald Trump and sent that dirty dossier to the FBI. So that's who Trevor Potter is. It's also run by a guy named Jason Jeffrey, who was the director of the Southern Poverty Law Center, a very, very left-wing organization. And you know who donates to this organization, the Campaign Legal Center? Act Blue, George Soros, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund Watch, which they contribute to environmental causes and anti-Israel organizations, as a matter of fact, according to Influence Watch. So you've got the Campaign Legal Center. They are the ones, and basically what they're doing is they are asking for an investigation. That's all they're doing. They're asking for Ogles isn't necessarily under investigation. They're asking for an investigation. They're demanding an investigation, which is all fine, well, and good. I mean, that's what the Campaign Legal Center does. But if you look back at their history, a lot of their investigations, they tend to focus on Republicans. And again, follow the money. Who donates to the Campaign Legal Center? Act Blue, George Soros, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. They contribute to environmental causes, anti-Israel organizations. So be careful when you have these claims that any organization is bipartisan, because sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're far from it. And sometimes they use this phrase bipartisan as a way to say, well, we're bipartisan, we're completely fair. Now, just so you know, I'm not dismissing any accusations against Andy Ogles. I mean, if there are discrepancies here, if there are things that he did wrong, then he does need to be accountable. He does need to be held accountable. So I'm telling you, though, that not all is what it seems to be. These headlines can be very deceiving, as a matter of fact. Let's not forget, of course, that Donald Trump is, somebody who is controversial. And so anybody who supports Donald Trump, and trust me, I know this, anybody who supports Donald Trump, especially these days, is going to be under attack and under fire. And so that's part of what this is. The majority of the Republicans, again, is razor thin. They're trying to pick off as many Republicans as they can, especially the very conservative ones, the pro-Trump ones. And let's face it, Andy Ogles is very pro-Donald Trump. And so he was on with Matt Murphy yesterday, and he says this is all part of the weaponization of government.
Part of that, I think, is it's weaponized to try to get you to sit down and shut up. But I refuse to do so. I've continued to point out areas of the government that need to be fixed, that need to be addressed, that need to be held accountable, and I'll continue to do so. The D.C. establishment, the liberals out there, they don't like that, but that's what you elected me to do, and I won't relent. End of story.
So remember, you've got the Campaign Legal Center, this left-wing advocacy group, and they're asking the Federal Office of Congressional Ethics, that is an independent agency created by the U.S. House of Representatives, to review allegations of misconduct and, when appropriate, to refer those matters to the House Ethics Committee. But they haven't said, the Federal Office of Congressional Ethics, they have not said whether or not they'll actually do an investigation yet, only that this activist group is calling for it. So I'm seeing all of these headlines yesterday, and, they're very alarming. And Ogles is, this is a very serious allegation and all of these other things. And, I'm watching and I'm reading all of this, and I'm thinking, well, this is a left-wing group that is doing what left-wing groups do, and that is go after conservatives. And Ogles said, listen, I've been cooperating with the FEC since day one.
We have reached out to the FEC. We did our own self-audit. So again, it's one of those, we're going above and beyond. And quite frankly, the FEC has been great to work with. You have a question, they give you an answer. You ask for help, they give you help. And so, and I think that's key. And if we find a mistake or they find a mistake, then we'll fix it. That's what you do. And so again, they're looking for any way to attack me. They will continue to attack me.
Yeah, obviously. And again, these are questions that do need to be answered. Andy needs to answer these questions like we would demand of anyone who represents us. Now, my rule has always been, because I'm not absolving Congressman Ogles of any wrongdoing. I don't know whether or not there's any wrongdoing here or not. But what I do know is that Andy says that he's been cooperating with the FEC. These allegations have been out there for a long time now. And it seems to me like if there was any, if there was any real wrongdoing here, then he would have been facing the consequences already. But these are questions that do need to be addressed. But my rule has always been, if you would demand it of a Democrat, then you do need to demand it from Republicans as well. Otherwise, you are a hypocrite. But I'm pointing out that this campaign legal center is far from bipartisan. They have their grubby little hands, with the likes of John McCain, who is, again, very anti-Donald Trump. And I just told you all the folks that donate to the campaign legal center. Act Blue, George Soros, the Rockefeller brothers, to name just a few. And any comparisons to George Santos, by the way, is ridiculous. That's also part of the headlines out there. To me, any possible comparison to George Santos is absolutely ridiculous. Santos and his lying was just epic and insane with all of the fabrications. With Ogles, there's basically two questions here that he does need to answer, and once he does, we can all move on. I would be curious, and I have yet to open up the super text line. Let me do that right now. The super text line. I am curious as to what you folks think about the situation regarding Andy Ogles, because I don't believe that Andy is trying to cover anything up. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but I don't believe that he is. But I'm suspicious of these headlines and these outlets that say that this group is nonpartisan when clearly they are not. 4751, doesn't Andy Ogles run advertisements on your radio station? I don't think you need to talk about him if he pays the bills. Well, I don't know. Does he run? I don't know if he ran commercials on WTN or not. Did he, Johnny? He did? Okay. Well, here's one thing about the talk show hosts on WTN. We don't give two rips who runs commercials and who don't. I mean, I'm just telling you, we don't care. If somebody's doing some wrongdoing, we're not afraid to speak out, regardless of who runs spots or not. I think that over the commercials, I think that we've all given examples of that over the past many years. So bottom line is, again, for Andy, if he's done something wrong here, then as he said, if there's something wrong, we'll fix it. I think that's one of the most important statements that he made. If there's something wrong, let's fix it. Now, as far as the $320,000 and where it came from, that seems like a pretty simple question to answer. And at some point, if I can get him back on the program, I'll ask him, okay, so where did the $320,000 come from?